under these laws. And I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that ATTA Mills will be in no hurry to arrange for the exchange of these prisoners or their transfer from foreign jail, where they are justifiably languishing, into Ghanaian prison. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you will want to have an idea as to some of the initiatives that we want to take. When it comes to the economy, which obviously is what the whole thing is about, we would want to adopt a set of policies which will ensure high economic growth. We will do this by anchoring it in increase in domestic savings to support a high volume of investment in infrastructure. Our emphasis on infrastructure is deliberate. By so doing, we'll be facilitating industrial development, which will enable us to create jobs for our people. We will not be unmindful of the need to have macroeconomic stability. But we are not going to have macroeconomic stability for its own sake. We would want an economic environment that gives us the fiscal space to invest meaningfully in agriculture, in education, in housing, in health, among others. We shall also review the exemption scheme under our tax laws and also put in place measures that will enhance revenue collection. And ladies and gentlemen, we will not also hesitate in cutting out extravaganza, frills, and profligate expenditure in government. Now, when it comes to agriculture, that, as I said, is going to be the backbone. A nation that cannot feed itself is a nation in distress. We have a situation currently where the Ghanaian, or the average Ghanaian, I must say, spends almost 70% of his income on food. Now, with the rising prices, he may be spending 80% of his income on food. This is unacceptable. ATTA Mills would want to begin a renaissance in agriculture. We would want at the end of our term to ensure that the Ghanaian spends much less on food. How do we intend to do this? We intend to double production of cereals and other staples, and the cultivation, fruits, vegetables, and even flowers. Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, there is no country in the world which has succeeded in agriculture without paying attention to one important ingredient, that is water. Unfortunately, these days, due to the climatic changes, we cannot rely on rain-fed agriculture. For this reason, we are going to rehabilitate all the irrigation projects that we have in the country, and even establish new ones in designated areas. But our flagship irrigation project is going to be the canalization of the Accra Plains, consisting of 178,000 hectares of land. I want to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that this was indeed an important but rather unimplemented program of Kwame Nkrumah with regard to his Volta River project. We shall also establish a factory to produce fertilizer in the Western region, given our gas reserves. Next, we are going to continue our our forestation, something which we bequeath to the NPP. This time round, we are also going to encourage bamboo cultivation. Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to poultry, it's a very sad story. In 1992, 95% of the poultry consumed locally came from local sources. At the moment, due to the unbridled importation of poultry products, local poultry sources account for only 10%. The poultry industry is near collapse. We want to reverse this trend. We are going to impose tariffs and duties on imported poultry products, and this can be done in accordance with WTO rules. We'll also reduce the cost of poultry feed, and finally, help poultry farmers reactivate their businesses through the establishment of a poultry subsector fund. When it comes to fishing, the activities of foreign fleet and trawling activities have indeed led to a situation where our fish stock is being seriously depleted, and where the livelihood of some of our fishermen is being adversely affected. We propose to reserve our 200-mile exclusive economic zone for purposes of conservation. This can be done under the UN law of the sea. And during this period, trawling will be monitored and regulated. Now, when it comes to premixed fuel, we attempt to remove the bottlenecks associated with the production and distribution. And we think that the interests of fishermen will be best served if the premixed fuel is made the responsibility of our chief fishermen. Ladies and gentlemen, education. Any country which ignores education does so at its own peril. Now let's look at preschool and primary education. In this 21st century, it is unpardonable and unacceptable for children to acquire education under trees, dilapidated structures, and life-threatening substructures. It is not good enough. We'll take steps to rehabilitate these structures. We will also, in addition, extend the school feeding program to cover all primary schools. We will, in addition, take seriously the deworming exercise, and also, in cases where the people cannot afford school uniforms, we'll give them standard school uniforms. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to secondary education, I must say that the Professor Anamoa Committee did a very professional job. But when it came to the level of political decision making, the NPP government thought it was important to put its seal on the education reform program by tinkering with a component on secondary education. Now, the tinkering indeed appeared very petty in certain respects, especially the change of name from junior secondary school to junior high, senior high. One would ask, what will NDC do? Are you going to reverse the decisions? The answer is no. We do not want education to be regarded as a football to be kicked around by parties in power. What we intend to do is to convene a meeting of all stakeholders and all political parties so we agree on the way forward. There is also the problem of access. At the moment, only half of the people who qualify for secondary education gain access. In our time, we're able to provide 250 secondary schools. In the 7.5 years of the MPP government, they provided only 50. We have a shortfall of 300. We need to do something about this. When it comes to the curriculum, now in this globalized world and demand-driven areas happen to be creative arts, French, Spanish, sciences, etc. These subjects, in addition to religious and moral education, will be included in the curriculum and then emphasized. Indeed, the Constitution stipulates that education should be progressively free. We will take steps to ensure that over a period, we are able to achieve some degree of provision so that eventually we can make secondary education free. When it comes to tertiary education, we are not in favor of full cost recovery. We want cost sharing. Indeed, we think that needy but brilliant students must be assisted. And also students who study science, who study mathematics and technology must also be aided. And therefore, we propose to set aside a portion of the GET fund to aid such students. We also propose to expand accommodation and other facilities on the campuses, accede to the request of NUPS to have a modern office complex, complete the campus for the Ghana Institute of Journalism, and also get together with NUPS and stakeholders to review the student loan scheme. When it comes to health, it is our proposal to review the National Health Insurance Program, which, because of spin and propaganda, the NPP government refused to do. We want to make it truly national. We also want to continue with the rehabilitation of our teaching hospitals and our regional and district hospitals. We also want to provide the Koforidua, Wa, and Bolga with modern district hospitals. We also want to procure diagnostic equipment for our teaching hospitals and for our medical profession. Ladies and gentlemen, we also intend to bring about an innovation in the training of medical personnel, the physician assistant, who will be below fully fledged medical officers. We're also going to pay attention to the training of nurses and indeed auxiliary nurses. Ladies and gentlemen, energy, and the dialogue which was organized by Kwame Nkrumah University, at which I was represented by my running mate, in whom I'm well pleased. I gave a comprehensive outline of what we intend to do. In the medium term, we want to increase the energy situation from 1,600 megawatts to 5,000. We are going to rely on gas-fired energy rather than oil-fired energy, which will make sure that the cost of energy is low. It will enable VALCO not only to operate, but it will also enable us to have an aluminum industry which will indeed make use of our bauxite deposits, something which has been our dream since the First Republic. We also intend to expand the Osadifo badge and also to implement the Abwazi thermal Abwazi steam turbine unit. We are delighted that we have struck oil. But ladies and gentlemen, nobody will deny that this is the crowning glory to the efforts made by GNPC under Chachu Chikata, who is now languishing in jail. And I believe that Tatuchi take pride in the fact that through his selfless efforts, this country has been blessed by the Almighty with oil reserves. Now let me say that we are going to account strictly for the revenues which are going to come from our oil and gas. We are going to have an independent all-party body to oversee the operation of this segment of our economy. We are not going to engage in profligate spending. We are going to make sure that we use the revenues for the benefit of the people. We want our oil discovery to be a blessing and not a curse. Ladies and gentlemen, the oil companies would be well advised, given the experience of other countries, to form meaningful partnership with the communities in which they operate. Especially the fishermen should not feel that their livelihood is being destroyed by the operation of these companies. Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to renewable energy, we have wind energy, which is the result of research done during our time by the Energy Commission. And indeed, we are told that we can get about 5,200 megawatts using wind energy. Solar energy will go ahead to exploit it. And indeed, it is possible for us to have hydro schemes on Tano, Pra, and Cobra, and Polu. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, what is the future? What is the future picture for it? There are some who say that our ideas are big. Others will say they are too simple. There are those who are going to ask, how are you going to fund these schemes? Let me tell you, if we cut out the excessive spending, that will be the first step in the journey of 100 miles or 1,000,000 miles. There are those of our skeptics who will say, you cannot eradicate poverty in this country. Poverty, like corruption, started from the time of Adam. But let me say, ladies and gentlemen, it's ironical that in 7.5 years, some elected officials who were wallowing in poverty have been able to get out of it. And yet they tell us that it is too short a period for us to be able to do something about eradication of poverty. Ladies and gentlemen, ATTA Mills would want to have a society where every child of school-going age has the right to do so, where women are going to be empowered to take their rightful places in society, where Ghana will be the financial hub of the sub-region, where food will be in abundance, where we shall be each other's keeper, where we will not be fighting among ourselves. ATTA Mills will want to hear a government which is caring, which is honest, and which is accountable. Kwame Nkrumah had a creative spirit. That is why he was able to achieve so much. Former President Rawlings, in whose government I was privileged to serve, had big ideas and courage. It is no wonder, therefore, that under his watch, we were able to extend electricity to the northern parts of our country, even though people had told us that it was impractical to do so. ATTA Mills believes with the right kind of leadership, which is not vindictive, which is forward-looking, which has a common objective, we should be able to attain our objectives as a nation. ATTA Mills would want to be remembered as the leader during whose period of stewardship the people of Ghana did what was pleasing in the sight of God, and the good Lord himself showered our nation with his blessings. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Many thanks to Professor ATTA Mills. If you've just joined us, you're live on national television, GTV station of the nation, also on national radio on Joy 99.7 FM, also around the world at myjoyonline.com. Like we said, I hope that you were taking notes whilst he was talking, because we opened the floor for everybody here to ask a question. We also have representatives from different organizations who we're going to be calling up to also ask questions specific to their organizations of Professor Mills. He also tells me that copies of his speech will be made available. If you still want your copy, I think that might disrupt our discussion, but later on I believe that the copies will be made available. I'm going to start off by asking him a few questions based on what he said, and I will just restrict myself to one for starters, and then in between I'll come up with a few. In making your presentation, Prof, you did talk about the fact that you will crack the whip on members of your government who go wrong. It was your government that passed the law on causing financial loss to the state. And yet, at the start of your statement, you said you were sad that Chachukata had been jailed. Were you sad because the law you passed had been applied, or because you thought that he was unjustly sentenced?
Well, I had the rare privilege of going to court on a number of occasions and listening to the proceedings. I'm also a lawyer. I was there when that law was passed. And I must say that I was taken aback by the judgment. I thought that Chachu had done the best that he could. And rather than throwing him into jail, I genuinely believe that he deserves an honor. Somebody who has rendered selfless and dedicated service to our nation. Chachu has no property to his name. He has nothing. And if you serve a nation that does not honor its heroes, you think twice about making any sacrifice. But this will be my statement. At the appropriate time, I will come out and come out fully. But I know that the good Lord is going to be Chachu's judge.
Right, and if you have any questions of your own, if you raise your hand, we'll get the microphones to you in a moment, and then you can ask your questions. I've got a couple of text messages from people who are watching us on GTV and also on Joy, listening live on 99.7 and also on national radio. And I'm going to start with one of those text messages. It says here that Professor Mills, you spoke about agriculture and how you wanted to double cereal, fruit and vegetable production. You didn't tell us exactly how you plan to do that. That's from Senyo in the Poultry region.
Let me tell you, I said that when it comes to agriculture, one of the main ingredients is water. If you have been engaged in farming, you would know that. And we said that one way of doing this, or the way we are going to do this, through irrigation. I believe, therefore, that with the investment in infrastructure generally that we are going to make, and the particular attention that we are going to pay to agriculture, not lip service, we think that we should be able to do this. I've told you about Accra Plains, where you have regular supply of water, where you have fertilizer, and where you have the commitment and dedication. I don't think that there is anything that you cannot achieve. Other countries have achieved, their objectives. Why can't we as a nation? Indeed, let me tell you, it was done some time ago. You were all witnesses in the 1970s, went through Operation Feed Yourself. At least we were able to increase agricultural production. I'm not saying that we should liken what we intend to do to this, but I'm saying that where there is a will, there is a way.
All right, let's go to the audience now. I've got two people with microphones right now. If I can get you to introduce yourself and please ask the question under 1 minute. Thank you.
My name is Amos. Hello? Yeah, my name is Amos Safo. I'm editor of Public Agenda. Still on the Chachu case, what would you do with the causing financial loss to the state? Would you consider repealing it or maintaining it on the stated books?
It will remain on the statute books until we as a party or government think otherwise. But I believe that it is not the law beyond the statute books. There are so many laws. It's a question of interpreting it. Yes, in the spirit in which it was passed. This is, our problem with it. It's not the law per se. How do you interpret it? And I believe that in this particular case, it's been a great of the courage of justice in Chachu State.
All right, I'd like to also tell our audience that because the focus of this evening's encounter is not Mr. Chikota's sentencing, we're not going to focus anymore on that. You can catch up with Professor Mills outside the auditorium once we're done, and you can ask him your questions on Chachu. Shall we stick to the substantive issues he raised in his presentation and his focus or plan for the country? You've got the microphone, please.
My name is Suji Pt2, General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association.
I don't believe we can hear.
Thank you.
Hello? Okay.
Yes, Dr. Tete.
My name is Suji Pt2, General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. The Ghana Medical Association is concerned about the state of mental health care in the country, aspects of which are a spin-off of the narcotic drug trade. There are reported increasing incidents of narcotic use in secondary schools. We have a severe shortage of staff in the psychiatric hospitals, a handful of doctors and nurses, and generally the state is something that requires attention. Now, what I want to know from you is that for over 3 years, we've had a mental health bill which has still not been passed. And what are the plans of the NDC as far as reforming the state of mental health care is concerned? Thank you.
Well, I wish you had said that the 3 years is NDC which is in power. If it hasn't been passed, I believe that you know where to lay the blame. But that is one reason why I'm worried about the narcotics trade, is the effect it has on especially our youth, who are the future leaders. Here we are. We now have to find additional resources to ensure that we are able to control the harmful effects of the drug use. We have no option but to prevail on Parliament so that they go ahead and look at the bill and pass it into law. Whatever resources we have, we also have to look at the state of mental health in our country and see what we can do. I mean, it is the responsibility of government. If we have not been vigilant enough, if we have allowed drug use in our country, if we have opened our doors, the least that we can do for our youth is to redeem them from the pits into which they have fallen.
Mr. Kwesi John.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, who took advantage of her position to ask the first question unfairly. Madam Moderator, what the distinguished professor has told us this evening is very interesting. But even more interesting is what he refused or failed to say. We have not heard one word about private sector development. We have not heard one word about political corruption. Finally, what you said about irrigating the airplanes. I want to find out, Madam Professor, whether you are aware of those research findings that say that large-scale irrigation schemes do not work in the third world. Thank you.
Well, I hope you are not implying that they work elsewhere but not in the third world. If so, we have to find out what it is that we have to do. Well, Mr. Kwesi, when I was speaking, they passed the note to me. They were telling me that my time was up. In 25 minutes, you cannot cover every subject. I believe that when our manifesto is published, many of these areas will be covered. Well, very soon. But let me say that when I appeared before the AGI, I had the opportunity to discuss with them private sector development and to look at their concerns. On corruption, I believe that you've heard me time and again about corruption, what we need to do about corruption. We are told, the institutions to check corruption. If indeed we have them, we must give them their independence and resource them to be able to do their work. And when they come out with findings, we must not only back, we must bite. We must show that corruption is indeed inimical to the interests of our country.
And I'd like to also take this opportunity. I know a lot of people want to ask questions, so we're going to take 2 questions at a time, and then Professor Mills will respond. Start with you.
Pt2, University of Ghana. Yes, Prof. I'm speaking on a topic that is dear to both of us, education. You mentioned that there was a problem of access.
Can you please take the microphone closer to you now?
Yes, you mentioned that there was a problem of access, and you mentioned that under your leadership, all students who qualify in science and technology would be given scholarships. Recently, there was a lecture at the British Council. No, first of all, the National Council for Tertiary Education has a 60-40 mix between science and arts in our universities. That is what we are supposed to do as a developing country, to have 60% science students and 40% arts students. Professor Adakwa, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, says that even if we were to admit all the science students that qualify, we would still not make that 60% science student. So I would like to know what your government would do to encourage the production of science students. And I want to link it to an issue that you raised on primary education, the issue of content. I think that we can build all the classrooms that we want in this country, but the issue is one of quality. And I want to link again the issue of quality and science education to the issue of language. I want to know what your government's policy will be on language instruction in primary schools, and to enable children to understand science and mathematics and other such abstract concepts.
Many thanks to Professor Pt2. I want us to go to Mrs. Irina Damisa, because I believe she also raised a question
Well, I believe,
about education.
let me answer your question, because it's a mouthful.
Okay.
And that shows a university professor posing a question. Well, Pt2, the thing is this. When you have a package which is attractive, you'll find that students in choosing their subject will take a lot of things into consideration. Where they know that they can go to the university and get scholarships and sponsorship, as more students are going to be inclined to choose science subjects or to read science. I will tell you this. I had the privilege of teaching in the university. Many of the students who read administration, to my surprise, were top science students. But they chose administration because of the attractive nature of the jobs afterwards, and also because some companies were sponsoring them. That's just to show that once you have an attractive package, there will be tendency for students to move into that area. Now, you talk about what language are we going to use in the primary school. I think that communication is very, very, very important. And there are some who say that you should teach them in their native language. Now let me say that our native language is limited in so many areas. There are so many things that you cannot describe in our native language. I would say that the basic